The climate is changing fast, and so is the global conversation. Welcome to the Climate Trends podcast, where we bring you weekly insights on the environment, climate change, and sustainable development. Stay in the loop on what matters most. Join us in our series of special episodes leading up to the COP29, which starts on November 11th in Baku, Azerbaijan. We'll explore the key emerging themes, policy shifts, and most importantly, the crucial role of climate finance. On today's episode, we'll be discussing the critical role of the Global South as it heads into the COP29 and G20 meetings. Climate Trends recently hosted a roundtable to bring together senior experts and stakeholders to tackle some of the most pressing issues that the Global South faces. The discussion spanned a wide variety of topics, but there was a clear consensus on a few key priorities. One of the major points of agreement was the urgent need for climate finance. The roundtable made it clear the financial needs of developing nations have escalated, with estimates ranging from $1 to $2.4 trillion to address the climate crisis effectively. And while climate finance has been at the heart of international discussions for years, the actual flows of funds have remained well below expectations. In fact, despite promises made during past COPs, the Loss and Damage Fund has barely accumulated $700 million in pledges. Developing nations, including those represented at the roundtable, are not just asking for charity, they're demanding what they are owed. Under the principle of common but differentiated responsibilities, those who have contributed the most to global emissions, the wealthier developed nations, are responsible for supporting those least responsible but most affected by climate change. And yet, the Global South often finds itself fighting tooth and nail for these funds, with commitments from developed nations falling short time and again. The issue of equity is central to this debate. While developed countries push ambitious climate goals for themselves, there is often a lack of recognition of the different realities that the developing nations face. The participants stress that equity isn't just about who gets access to funds. It's about fairness in the overall climate narrative. Developing nations need space to grow, and many are still reliant on carbon-intensive industries for their development goals. This means that calls for immediate transition to renewable energy must be balanced with realities on the ground. At the same time, the Global South isn't sitting idly by. Regional cooperation and homegrown solutions like improving disaster preparedness or investing in natural infrastructure such as mangroves and wetlands are already making strides in adaptation. But again, these efforts can only go so far without the necessary financial support and technology transfer from the global north. Another focal point was the importance of multilateral cooperation. The Global South has a lot of potential. But as the experts at the roundtable pointed out, it must present a united front. The operationalization of the Loss and Damage Fund is a great example of how coordinated efforts from developing nations led to tangible progress. But the journey is far from over. The Global South still lacks a collective, unified framework that truly speaks to its diverse needs. And without this, it's harder to stand firm in international negotiations. Finally, a point that cannot be overlooked is the restructuring of multilateral development banks. Many roundtable participants emphasized how MDBs, like the World Bank, the ADB, are dominated by developed nations and control much of the available finance for developing countries. This current structure often fails to serve the needs of the Global South. To truly address climate challenges, these MDBs need to be reformed, both to cut the growing debt burden on the developing countries and to ensure that they have a stronger voice on the boards that control these funds. The experts agreed that waiting for these large bureaucratic entities to act isn't enough. Private capital and innovative financial solutions must also be channeled into developing nations. And it's not just about funding new projects. It's about ensuring that these funds are accessible, transparent, and governed effectively. So what does this all mean as the Global South approaches COP29 and the G20 meetings? The stakes couldn't be higher. The Global South is fighting for fair financial support, for equity in the way climate action is discussed and implemented, and for recognition that their development pathways may look different from those of the Global North. The consensus is clear. The Global South has the resources, the knowledge, and the willingness to take bold climate action. But to make this a reality, they need the developing world to step up. Not words, but real, actionable financial support. That's all for today's episode. As we head toward COP29 and G20, we'll keep you updated on the outcomes and what they mean for the future of global climate action. Thanks for tuning in. And until next time, let's continue working for a fairer, greener world.